This is David Wolman.
Nice to see you. So, a few years ago, I started reading a little bit about the cost of manufacturing pennies and nickels. Some of you might have seen stories along these lines of late. In the United States right now, we're at about 2.5 cents per unit per penny, and we're at about 10 or 11 cents per unit per nickel. Now, you don't have to be an economist to know that those numbers are upside down. I kind of wanted to jump into the fray a little bit of this conversation. I'd seen a report in the Wall Street Journal. Stephen Colbert had taken some fun shots on his show. But my editor and I at Wired, we decided that we would amp up the bluster a little bit, and I would write an essay proposing not just to get rid of small coinage, but to get rid of cash entirely. And for those of you who don't know the publication, you have to write rather pugnacious prose. And so I really didn't hold back. Cash is anachronistic, it's germ-saturated and carbon-intensive and very expensive. Criminals love it. Everything else is moving to the digital realm already. Let's get rid of cash. The response was, number one, enormous, and number two, very, very angry. And people were sort of coming at me from all angles. Right away, I started to hear from Christian fundamentalists who said that once we reach the cashless society, you can expect the Antichrist in about 3 minutes. I was hearing from sort of the militiamen set, presumably from their cabins off the grid, although maybe they pop down to the public library now and then to send some emails to people like me saying, I'll keep my guns and my cash and my gold, you can keep your electronic payment tools. Then I was also hearing a lot from people, rightly so, who worry about privacy. In the digital age, we should be worrying about it already with Facebook and Google gathering so much data about us. If we are a cashless society, then will we really just be subjecting our financial lives to further scrutiny from big banks and credit card companies? That doesn't necessarily seem like a good idea either. Cash, of course, is an anonymous means of transaction, and that is valuable to a lot of people, tax evaders especially. The other people who started writing me were saying, you know, I like this idea, I hear some of the reason in it, and I know that cash is expensive, but I don't know, David, there's something about the physical. And they don't often go like this, that physical experience. And for me, I see a lot of parallels with people, frankly, who don't like ebooks and e-readers. You know, they just want to snuggle up with a book made from dead trees. And the same thing comes to transacting with notes and coins. So, oh, and then there's one other group that is essential to acknowledge here, which is people who have had debt problems in their lives or in their families, and they see cash, rightly or wrongly, as their ally in the struggle for sound financial management and personal financial management and stability. And, you know, we've all felt this. A $100 bill to an economist is liquid assets like $100 from your debit card, but we all know that one of those is much harder to spend than another. What was really striking to me about the emotional intensity of this response was the reality that we have actually marginalized cash very much in our everyday lives. And to a great extent, we have said yes to the electronic money proposition. That doesn't mean we love credit cards per se, but most of the people in this room, you know, you have a bank account. You probably don't pay your mortgage or your car payments or your student loans with a briefcase full of cash every month. We've said yes to this idea, and most money nowadays is already zeros and ones on computers. And yet, when you say to people, wow, cash is pretty old and it's rather cumbersome, it looks like it's nearing the edge of the cliff. Let's wander over there. You know, is it about to fall off? Should we push it off? Should we erect a fence and save it? Everyone goes bananas. And to me, right away, that said, you should write a book about this. But there was this one guy who wrote me that I have to tell you about, because he said to me after this total tirade about the urgency of returning to the gold standard, and Ben Bernanke is the devil incarnate, and central bankers are evil, evil, evil. He said to me, do you even know what money is? And it really caught me off guard. You know, I think I know enough. It's a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. It's a standardized unit of account. But what did I really know about money's history, money's machinations? what it means to us, not just in our wallets, but in our minds and in our hearts, and what would this cashless future look like? To understand that, I would really need to know a little bit more about money in the first place. So what I set out to do was try and answer those really macro questions, but through this particular lens of the fate, or potentially dubious fate, of cash. And the way I went about it was twofold. First, I decided not to use the stuff, not even touch it, for an entire year. If I'm going to glimpse the cashless future, is it even possible? What kind of hiccups would I run into in my everyday life? Secondly, I broke the bank, so to speak, on airline tickets. Mobile phones are a theme later, so that's perfect. So I broke the bank on airline tickets, and I traveled the world trying to find people whose experiences and ideas would illuminate some answers for me. But really with an emphasis on the less than usual suspects. If you want to learn about money and currency, you can go talk to a PR flack at the central bank. You will learn some things. It will also probably be boring. So what I wanted to do was go and find some atypical characters. I flew to Georgia, and I met with a pastor at a rural church there who unpacked this anxiety about the book of Revelation and why the cashless society means Armageddon is just around the corner. From there, I headed over to Iceland. I met with an elderly woman there who designed Iceland's banknotes. And I wanted to hear from her more about this relationship between national currency and national identity. Do you need one to have the other? The Euro project certainly suggested that you don't. And now the Euro crisis suggests maybe you do. She was talking about banknotes, by the way, as this heritage you can hold in your hand, which I love. And I also really enjoyed her struggle on how to come up with images that weren't, yet again, more waterfalls, cod, and sheep, which seems to be the imagery that have adorned Icelandic banknotes through the ages. So then I flew to Hawaii. I met with a convicted counterfeiter, this guy who founded something called the Liberty Dollar. And then from there to Tokyo to research the latest anti-counterfeiting technologies. Counterfeiting is as old as money, or as others have told me, the second oldest profession. And from there, it was off to London to learn about the gold standard and the history of banking, and really drill down a little bit with some of these digital money futurists over there. And finally, I went to India. And for me, this was really the most revelatory part of the whole project, because I went there to research this really explosion of interest and development in the area of mobile money and mobile banking technologies. And while there, I met with a young electronic shop repairman in the slums of Delhi who has this cheapo Nokia brand phone that, as of a few months ago, he can, with a few clicks at the counter at his local kiosk, he can deposit earnings into a very no-frills bank account with the State Bank of India. He can also send money to Granny in the countryside, just like a text message. Whereas previously, this was 3 days travel for him. He'd have to pay someone to look after his shop. His wealth, cash only, is very precarious up there in his apartment above the shop. This tool has completely changed his life. And that was really a wake-up call for me because, number one, I just didn't really know about a lot of this phenomenon. Economists love it, development types love it, but people I hear from say, oh, no, digital money is really elitist, classist idea. The poor don't have iPhones. Well, that's true. The poor don't have iPhones, but it's also true that by 2014, an estimated 90% of all adults in the world will have a mobile phone. And the fact is, a lot of this technology works through these simpler devices. Certainly, all the answers aren't there yet, and these systems need to be robust so that people aren't, it's one thing to drop a call, it's quite another thing to drop someone's money into the ether. Nevertheless, this stuff is really taking off. So after this world tour, I came home, okay, what exactly did I learn? That a monetary revolution is absolutely afoot, and it is really exciting. And yes, it's worrisome in certain regards, especially when it comes to privacy, for example. And no, we can't get rid of cash tomorrow. But the way to think about this monetary revolution is kind of three broad categories. The first is enthusiasm and really innovation in the space of alternative and virtual currencies. Some of you might have heard of the Toronto dollars I was reading about recently. There's things like the Ithaca hours or the Brixton pound in London. Disney dollars, as silly as it might sound, that is an alternative currency. So are your airline miles. And these things work because remember, a dollar, US dollar, Canadian dollar, whatever, what makes it a dollar is only our belief that it has value. Why do we believe it has value? Well, because I'm fairly confident that you too will accept it as something that has value. And that's it. And these alternative currencies are being born, and they're being born for a number of different reasons. Some has to do with the kind of economics equivalent to the eat local ethos. I want to keep money here in my community. I don't want to log on to Amazon.com, buy a blender made in China that's shipped to me by UPS. I want to buy something from the local merchant and keep money here. But you're also seeing a lot of excitement in this area, especially online, from people who have great anxiety about really the stewardship of national currencies, especially the euro right now, but not exclusively. And we're seeing this, online is really the most exciting area to watch the alternative and quasi-alternative and virtual currencies development. You see Linden dollars in the game Second Life. Facebook credits are getting a lot of attention right now because they have already close to 1 billion people in the tent who could potentially be transacting with this currency. And then, of course, my favorite, this thing called Bitcoin, is a cryptocurrency that is really popular among techies. And the idea here is that the money supply, the amount of money out there in the supply, is not controlled by a bunch of dudes in suits sitting around a table. It is controlled by an algorithm. And just yesterday, while flying here, actually on an airplane where I could not use cash to buy anything, I'm reading on the front page of the National Post that a lot of Europeans are cashing out of their savings in euros and trying to buy Bitcoin because they see this as a safer store of value. I'm not saying everyone here should go do that. There are lots of questions about the stability of something like Bitcoin, and national currencies certainly have had tremendous success over the last century or more. Nevertheless, this is happening. Prong number 2 is what I would call a more honest accounting of the costs of cash. Cash can be very convenient, very quick, and rather safe. If we go to dinner tonight and you cover the bill and then I take out a few banknotes to reimburse you for my half, that's that. It was good. But banknotes and coins have this huge backstory, and they're rather cumbersome and expensive. And it goes well beyond just the cost of manufacturing this stuff. And by the way, Canada, I should say, congratulations for killing the penny. I'm terribly, terribly envious. But once you start to look at the concentric circles going outward about those costs, we see a group, for example, at Tufts University in the United States, they're doing a big costs of cash study. Cash, of course, is the currency of crime. And if you get rid of high-value banknotes, right away you make work so much harder. You make business so much harder for the drug dealers of the world and really of any criminal enterprise. And most of all, of course, is tax evasion. In the United States, the gap between what people owe and what they pay is roughly $400 to $500 billion per year. Now, all of that, of course, is not cash-enabled tax evasion, but a lot of it is. Now, of course, it's really hard to calculate how much of it is because that's the whole point. It's an anonymous means of transaction. That's what these people at Tufts are trying to go after. In the book, I also talk about a report put out by some top brass at the Pentagon talking about the costs of greenbacks, or really any well-respected currency out there, circulating in the theater of war, especially Iraq and Afghanistan. These piles of cash, these plane loads full of cash, are expensive to deliver, expensive to secure. Troops need them on the front line to buy water or sandbags or information, and yet they come back to haunt us. Because if you are a bad guy out there and you want to purchase some illicit materials with which to do harm to NATO forces, nothing is better than the US $100 bill. So the Pentagon wants to get rid of cash. In Sweden, there is a really progressive effort by the government there and a kind of open-minded central banker who's saying much more directly that cash has these incredible costs. We can't just talk about cash management as being the extent of the expense. That is production, distribution, security. We need to go further. In the United States, we had 10,000 bank robberies in the US in 2009, 2010. So as a taxpayer now, I have to pay for law enforcement to go after those crooks, and prosecution and incarceration, PTSD therapy for the bank employees, and on down the chain. And in Sweden, they're very aggressively trying to get rid of cash for all of these reasons and more. So even though it's something of an uphill battle. Why? Because we love cash. I mean, from the day you lost that first tooth and felt that coin under your pillow, you love this stuff. It has its hooks in you in ways that behavioral economists and psychologists can unpack for you quite easily. And these Biases really affect our spending behavior. So there's no question that cash has its hooks in us, and yet we are seeing gradually this rising tide of criticism toward cash as a form of money. The last area really of the revolution, of course, is new technologies, and especially the phone, or really that device in the future that people nostalgically once referred to as the mobile phone, when really it is this do-everything tool. And we're seeing this not just with something like PayPal Mobile or Starbucks app for buying a latte. This goes so much further than techies enjoying the latest way to buy coffee. This is about Sonu Kumar, the electronics shop repairman in the slums of India. This is about a program like M-Pesa in Kenya that was launched a couple of years ago. It now has upwards of, I'm not sure the precise figure, I think it's like 17 million adults are using it. More than a quarter of all adults in the country. More money, more value is zipping through that system than all the money that Western Union is transmitting around the globe. People want this, they see value in it, and they see it as safe. So we have it with money transfer programs, person-to-person tools. We have this with mobile banking technology so that we can pull the poor into the formal economy and help people build stability in their financial lives. And then, of course, we're seeing it from whether it's Apple or Square or iZettle. These are all technologies or companies that you're hearing about. They all see how expensive it is to be transacting with money in its current form, and they all want to take a bite out of those middleman costs and make your financial life more friction-free. That largely is a good thing. Now, I should say, as a final note, really, that there's also the need for these technologists not necessarily to help us part with our funds more easily, but actually help us control our spending more. The kind of Weight Watchers equivalent to the mobile money tools. Because I might need some blockers, because that bias for the $100 bill in my wallet, I just don't want to break it. The physical object has real power over me. And electronic money, everybody knows, swiping is just so dangerous. And so I think for the technologists out there, this is a real opportunity for development. Will we get rid of cash in 4 or 5 years? Of course not. But I think you're kidding yourself if you think that 25 years from now, you can confidently predict what we can and what we can't do with technology. And I think that soon enough, cash will really be as anachronistic as the payphone. Thank you.